Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's reading vlog, we are reading about devils. I thought this could be a fun idea for a reading vlog because as I was going through my TBR of backlist books and then books that came out this year, I noticed that a lot of them had devil in the title and they all feel like very different books other than that aspect. So I thought it would be cool to read some books with devils in the title and kind of see how they all interpret that word, whether it is a biblical or religious sort of devil, or if it's just a play on something dark, something twisted, or a human doing terrible things. So 3 books that feel very different in tone, but they all kind of have to deal with the devil. So the 3 books that I am reading for this vlog, the first one is When Devils Sing by Kaur, and this one is a southern horror story about a town that seems very perfect, but people keep going missing and there is an undercurrent of rot running underneath this small town. We also have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, which is a horror fantasy blend, and this is about a ragtag team of people and also animals. I think there's a werewolf in here. We also have like a monk, just a ragtag assortment of characters that have to team up, kind of I feel like Suicide Squad-ish, where we have these maybe anti-heroes trying to defeat a greater evil. And then last but not least, we have The Devil Crept In by Ania Ahlborn. This is about a small town boy who's investigating the mysterious disappearance of his cousin. 3 books that I cannot wait to get to and that I don't think are going to have a lot in common other than a similar word in the title, but nevertheless, I'm excited for them all. Let's go ahead and get to reading. So I am now 30% of the way through The Devil Crept In by Ania Ahlborn. I just hit part 2 of this one and I figured that would be a great stopping point to go ahead and give a reading update, because this is one where from page 1 I was hooked. I cannot put this book down and I really had a hard time tearing myself away from this book to stop and give an update instead of just keep on reading. It's a very compulsive read so far. So we are following main character Stevie, and he is 10 years old, and on page 1 of this book, like, we immediately hit the ground running. Page 1 of this book, we follow Stevie. He's hanging out at his house. It's summer. His aunt comes over and asks if he has seen his cousin Jude. Jude is 13. He's a couple of years older than Stevie, and the two are not just cousins but best friends. So when she asks where Jude is and Stevie has no idea, the two families soon realize that Jude is missing and no one can account for his whereabouts. So searches are immediately started, the police are immediately called, and this whole entire town is notified that Jude has gone missing. It's a very small, very rural town. It's got a very small main street. It's got pretty much nothing except for a couple of local shops and a Walmart, and it's one of those smaller rural towns where everyone knows everybody else, and because of this there's some hiccups when it comes to looking for Jude. Jude is known around town as a problem child. He has some behavioral issues and is just not like an upstanding citizen. He gets in trouble a lot at school and around the town, and the police and a lot of people in the town write him off immediately as a runaway. And even though Stevie is only 10 years old, he's really obsessed with police procedurals and true crime shows, and he knows that the first 48 hours are really important in locating a missing person, and he is so frustrated at the fact that no one seems to be caring as much as him and his family when trying to locate Jude. Even though Jude is missing, everyone thinks that he's just run away, and in Stevie's eyes and in the reader's eyes as well, you can tell that they're not really doing doing as much as they could be doing. A lot of the search efforts feel very lackluster and are really focused on this kid is a delinquent and probably ran away, rather than the fact that something awful could have happened to him. So Stevie wants to take things into his own hands, and that is so heartbreaking to read about a 10-year-old boy who realizes that life is really not fair and that the way that you are perceived can impact really important things like search and rescue missions. So he decides to grab his notebook, grab his pencil, and start investigating and taking notes and trying to figure out this disappearance and bring his cousin home. This is a very propulsive and readable book for me because you really feel the constraints and the time pressure of trying to find Jude as fast as possible. So you are feeling that alongside the main characters, and we're also getting this really depressing character study of Stevie because he has his mother and his brother who he loves very much. He has a stepfather who is just absolutely the worst. He's very abusive, and so Stevie is not only dealing with his cousin going missing, but his stepfather being super abusive and not a great person. And then also Stevie has some speech impediments, so he has a stutter, and he also has echolalia, so he gets into rhyming with himself and just gets stuck down these word rabbit holes when he gets anxious, which obviously this is a pressure cooker of anxiety inducing situations for him. So my heart is really breaking for Stevie as a main character, and you're really hoping that things are going to work out well for him and for his family, and you're at the same time you're rooting for him to try and find his cousin, but at the same time he's 10 years old. If someone did take his cousin, he's also in a lot of danger if he's just going off into the woods, into these private places by himself. And that's another thing I like about this one, is that it is a small town. I love a small town setting, and I think this is utilized really well in this story. I also like how this really explores like the secret inner lives of children, because Stevie and Jude, you know, they have their activities and their hangout spots and play areas that their parents know about, but they also have like this secret fort that they've built in the woods and special little haunts around town. And there's also an abandoned house in the middle of the woods that they have taken to calling a haunted house. And all of this is kind of where Stevie starts his investigation, because these are things that the police, even their parents, aren't privy to knowing that these are places that the boys go. So far so good. I'm loving the small town setting. I love our main character, and I am just on tenterhooks waiting to find out what is going to happen in this story. So I'm gonna go keep reading, and I will check back in later with another update. So I finished The Devil Crept In by Ania Ahlborn, and I really enjoyed this one. It was such a propulsive read from beginning to end. I will say this is divided up into 3 parts. Part 2 introduces a new point of view, which I did find a little jarring, and the first chapter or so of that I was wanting to get back to Stevie, but it is important for the story and for the narrative. So part 3 moves back to Stevie and his cousin Jude and the search for what happened to Jude, and I really enjoyed this one. And the ending, even though as you're putting together the pieces of what happens, you think that you know everything of what is going to happen. And at like the 80% mark, I was like, all right, I know how this story is going to end. That's going to be kind of a bummer because this story is great, and I just felt like the ending was going to be predictable, and it absolutely was not. The ending to this one was really well done. It was shocking. It still tonally though fit in with the rest of the story, and then there is an epilogue which I just thought added an extra creep level, a creep factor to this story. So I really had a good time with this one in terms of this vlog. The title with the devil in there, the antagonist of sorts is definitely, I feel like that name kind of fits and I'm not going to give any more of that away, but the title is very apt. And what I will say is really interesting. These are two very different books, but at first blush, this one shares kind of a similar premise with Disappearance at Devil's Rock by Paul Tremblay. They both kind of feature a young boy going missing in a small town, and then they diverge into two very different stories. But I did think that was interesting that they both have devil in the title. So overall, this was a good start to the vlog. This one came out in 2017, and I was thinking that it was kind of backlist, but not that backlist, but it's almost 10 years old, which is crazy to think about, because as I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, this is a book that feels like it was written 2016, 2017. It has those vibes. It really captures that era, I guess, that's almost 10 years away now, but I really enjoyed it. This is really cemented Ania Ahlborn as an author that I really enjoy. So it is later on in the day. I do have my ring light going to film this update. I was reading the Ania Ahlborn pretty much all day, couldn't put it down, and now that I've finished that, I'm really eager to dive into another book. So I think I'm going to go ahead and dive into the next book for this vlog tonight, and that would be The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. This book is a fantasy horror hybrid, and it's about a ragtag group of the devils, ragtag group of people and creatures that have to come together to fight some evil in an alternate medieval Europe inspired setting. So I'm intrigued. This is going to be my first Joe Abercrombie, and I'm interested to see in what all of the hype is about. So I am about 100 pages into The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, and overall I'm enjoying this one. It's going okay. There are a lot of things that I do really like about this story, and then there are other things that I'm not really getting along with at this point in the narrative. The number one thing that's really bothering me, or not to my liking, for this book is the amount of toilet humor. It feels very juvenile, like just multiple characters. It's not just one where that's like their a character trait of theirs. All of the characters are constantly talking about bodily functions, and in particular feces, and it's a lot. It really reminds me of the type of humor that a tween boy would find funny, and it's a lot. So that's really bothering me. It's just gross and not funny, and feels too juvenile for these characters who are mostly all adults to be talking like. So there is that, and then some of the main characters I am really not liking, and other ones I am. So the plot of this story, we are following an alternate medieval type of Europe, and in particular we are following the church and a lot of people in the church. There is a schism that is happening. There's a lot of turmoil, and this is essentially the Catholic Church with the change that instead of popes and cardinals and all of that to being male, they're female. There's still one God, the creator, who is male, and a lot of the doctrine and a lot of the conventions and prayers and saints and everything are the same. So it is a retooled Catholic Church, which makes sense in the context of this alternative Europe style of setting. So we do have that, and we are following one of our main characters is actually the rightful heir to the throne, the kingdom of Troy, who has been missing for years when her mother was overthrown, and now she has to be put back on the throne because it's her rightful throne. And then we are also following a group of people, a group of characters that are going to help her get to that throne in one piece and help her take what is rightfully hers. So I do like Alex. She's that princess who's been living on the streets, and very much like an Aladdin-ish type of situation. She's a street urchin, and she has been scraping by, and then all of a sudden finds herself a fish out of water when she has a greater destiny than she ever thought possible. I really enjoy her as a character. The other main-ish character, because we're getting a lot of perspectives in here, but the one we start the story out with is Brother Diaz, who is a monk that has managed to raise himself in the esteem of the church, and he is called to the holy city. And at the beginning beginning of this book, he thinks that all of his working his way up to the top has guaranteed him a very cushy and luxuriative job, and that is just not the case. He finds himself taking a post at the Chapel of Holy Expediency, which means that he is now preaching to a ragtag group of devils who are people that the church really doesn't agree with, and the doctrine doesn't allow like them working together in theory, but in reality sometimes you have to fight devils with devils. So even though things like sorcery and vampires and elves are highly looked down upon and are enemies of the church officially, they have their own little, think of DC's Suicide Squad. If you can't beat them, join them, get some unsavory characters to do your unsavory work for you. So Brother Diaz and this group of characters are going to help Alex make the long trek to Troy to help her survive a coup and take over the throne. So Brother Diaz, I'm really not liking as a character. He is very cowardly and self-serving, which doesn't automatically make him like a bad character to follow, but he's very boring. There's another character, and I'm not going to get too much into every single specific devil because there are some reveals that aren't immediately given that I think are pretty cool, and that book is getting very heavy, so I just put it up there. But Brother Diaz is very boring to follow, and he's not very likable. So if you're going to give me an unlikable protagonist, at least make him interesting. But so far he's so boring and self-serving, so I'm not really liking following his perspective. But the devils, we also follow them as well. So just to give examples of some of these devils, we have an elf, and the elves in this world are actually an enemy of the humans. So we have an elf that's been captured that's working for this ragtag team. We also have a sorcerer of dark magic and necromancy and a vampire, among a few other people. So this group of the devils, they are very heretical. They are not with the church teachings or doctrine, but they are the only ones to get this job done. So what I'm liking about this one, the action scenes and the fighting scenes are full of tension and feel just very high stakes even from the jump. The action scenes are executed really well. I can vividly see what all is happening, and as we jump from character to character to follow how they're all doing in these larger battles, I think that's really fascinating. And I think that's probably a really big strength of Abercrombie's work, is that these scenes never feel like dull, and they're very engaging. I can clearly see and picture what all is happening, so I do really like that. And I like a lot of the other characters that aren't Brother Diaz. So far I think so good. At the beginning, the first 30 or so pages, I was really worried because we do start this off with Brother Diaz and his perspective and point of view, and he's my least favorite character in this. So I think starting off with him, I was really worried about the direction of this story, but now that we are following other characters, I don't mind that as much. So now that we're following a lot more characters, it's going a lot better for me. And as long as we just steer clear of the really heavy bathroom humor talk and just focus on more like mature themes, then I think I will continue to like this one. Okay, so I am now 200 pages into The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, and I don't know how I'm feeling about this one. I'm about at the 40% mark, and I'm not loving it, which is not exactly what you want to feel with such a lengthy book. Like, if you are reading a chunky over 500 pages book, then you want to be absorbed every page of the way. And for me right now, I'm just feeling really ambivalent. What I am liking, I'm really liking the action sequences, the battle scenes. Those are definitely the highlights, but where it's falling apart for me is just all of the banter and humor in this one is just not my type of humor, and I don't love it. It's not the character development or the character work that I tend to enjoy, and I'll kind of give a example of what I'm talking about when it comes to movies, because I think both of these are very popular. They're just just not my type of humor. So this is nothing against this book or these movies, but this book really feels tonally like a Joss Whedon film. And what I mean by that is the humor and the dialogue and the quip after quip after quip. Like it feels very similar. And I think that's going to make people either really love this one or really not get along with it, because just all of the conversations are just quip fests, and I just need something a little bit deeper, a little bit more. But I can tell some of these conversations are supposed to be very, very funny, and they're just not to me, and it just makes the characters feel very, very surface level. Adding on to that, I like half the characters. I don't even know if I like half the characters, but the characters that I like reading from, I like reading from about half, and about half I don't like reading from. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to DNF this one because I was really anticipating it. A lot of people are loving this one, and when it's good, it's really good. It's just, I don't know if I can deal with all of the humor and the quippiness for the rest of this book. So I don't know. I think I'm going to give it about 100 more pages and see how I feel, and then we'll decide if I'm going to DNF or push through. So yeah, not the update that I hoped to give on the Devils, but we'll have to see if the latter half kind of picks up a bit for me. So I am making an executive decision to DNF the Devils. I think I got so far into this one and I got about 250 pages before I decided I just don't think that this book is for me. I have seen from reviews that this one is like more funny than the other Joe Abercrombie. This one doesn't take itself as seriously, and I think I need that in an epic story, to have some level of seriousness. So I am not writing this author off of authors that I want to try out. Just this book in particular didn't really work for me. However, there is an audience for this, and honestly, for the people that I know, I think my little brother who is in high school would love this. I know that there's a lot of conversations about getting boys reading and keeping them reading throughout their adolescence and into adulthood. And I think, not that this is YA, this is adult, but I do think a high schooler could handle the level of complexity that is in here. And I just think like the humor and everything like that, if you know of a boy or a young man, like the 15 to 18, I think could handle this book. So if you know a young guy who is a reluctant reader, I think this would be a great recommendation. It does feel very quippy, like a lot of superhero movies, while also having a setting that feels a little familiar, but also has some fantasy, epic fantasy elements. I think that that's like the perfect age range. Not perfect age range, obviously this is marketed as adult, and I think older adults would enjoy this as well, but I think this could be a great adult book to really grab a reluctant reader and really get them hooked on reading. Again, this is not YA, this is adult. There is language in there and some darker content, but I think whatever is in this book is not as bad as like unfettered internet access. Like I feel like teenagers have seen worse than what's in this book in even just like movies and TV and different forms of social media like videos. So I think this could be great for those reluctant readers. It just has that level of juvenile humor that I didn't love, but I do think I could see someone like my little brother really enjoying this. So I am DNFing it. Unfortunately, just not a hit for me, and we are moving on to the third and final book in this vlog, and that would be When Devils Sing by Zan Kaur. So I am now 20% of the way through When Devils Sing, so I thought it would be a good opportunity just to give my first impressions about this one, and my first impression is going really well so far. This is definitely going to be a very atmospheric summery horror. It takes place right around the 4th of July in southern Georgia, so you definitely feel like that heat wave sort of horror. It's a small town as well, and I'm really loving this setup so far. In this one, we are following 4 teenagers. We have 4 points of view, and they either live in the town of Carrion or the neighboring town of Lake Clearwater. And as the name suggests, this is a very clear property line, a very clear wealth divide between the poorer town of Carrion and the wealthier town of Lake Clearwater. Every 13 years, these 2 towns come together for a celebration, and this festival is the Cicada Festival, and it is celebrating the 13-year cicada cycle, and this is a very important event for both towns. It's a big source of income and tourism. A lot of places in Carrion depend on the uptick of traffic during this 1 week to keep their small businesses afloat, and it's a really big deal for both of these towns. However, as the cicadas start to emerge from hibernation, lots of things start bubbling up on the surface of both towns that seem to maybe all be connected to each other. So our 4 points of view, we are following Sam, and she is the daughter of the town of Carrion's hitman. We're also following Isaiah, whose father is a very wealthy lawyer on the Lake Clearwater side, but all the rest of his family live on the Carrion side as farmers. We are also following Reed, whose father is one of the most influential men in the area, and then we are also following Nira, whose family owns and operates a motel in the town of Carrion. They are all dealing with their own personal struggles, but when a young man named Dawson goes missing, a man that all 4 of our main characters have different personal connections to, they want to figure out what happened to him. The police don't seem too concerned. He's 18. They say he can just run away, but they feel like there's something a little bit different than just a runaway situation going on. So as they dive into Dawson's disappearance, they start to realize a lot of seedy things that are happening in Carrion, happening in Lake Clearwater, are all connected, and that Dawson is not the only person that has gone missing during the 13-year cicada cycle. So far, so good. It's a very interesting premise, and even though we've been introduced to 4 different main characters, they all already have such distinctive voices, and I'm intrigued in hearing about all of their stories so far, which is exciting because typically I feel like it's very common with books that follow multiple characters. You're going to have some connections to some over others, and some that just have more enticing and more engaging plot lines than others. But for this one, I feel like so far it's very evenly spread in terms of what is happening to the different characters and my investment in what is happening. So far so good. Can't wait to keep reading this Southern Gothic. So I am now about 60% of the way through When Devils Sing, and I just got to part 2, and I'm still really enjoying this one so far. Today I've been reading a lot of it. It's been so hard to put this one down. I put on like a summer horror ambiance on my TV. It's got cicadas going. It's really adding to the atmosphere and the reading experience of this book, and I'm really enjoying this so far. It has a really great small town horror vibe, and I love that all 4 main characters have very different relationships to the towns of Carrion and Lake Clearwater, and they have very different relationships to the missing boy and different things that are happening in this town that are all related. And even though all 4 of our main characters are coming from very different tax brackets and very different areas of the 2 towns, I think this really shows like the symbiosis of a small town, a small area in which everyone knows everyone else, and just just a lot of things are connected. I really like about this one, we have a lot of mysteries going on. We have a lot of mysteries that our main characters are trying to solve, and as soon as we get some answers, we also have other questions that are opened up because of the answers that we get. So I'm really enjoying this one. So I am going to get back to reading and finish this one up definitely tonight. This one is absolutely a page turner, and it's just been a really great Southern horror so far. So I finished When Devils Sing, and I thought this was such an incredibly strong debut, and I was really impressed with the perfect combination of the slow southern small town atmosphere and then all of the different mysteries that were going on inside this small town. What I thought was interesting about this one was the four main characters didn't really know each other at the beginning. From the synopsis before diving into this one, I think I kind of assumed that they would all be friends at the beginning of this book, and it was like a friend group trying to solve this disappearance, and that is not the case. There's actually a large section of this book where they're not really interacting with each other, or maybe one of them is interacting with someone else, but they're not all as a group grouping it together. It's only when they start piecing the puzzle pieces together and figuring out all of the horrible things that have happened in this small town might be connected that they start coming together. So I really liked that. I thought it really gave all four main characters equal time to shine, and I really felt like all of the point of views in here were very distinct. I liked the way that this book explored what it feels like to live in a small town and feel just like an outsider. All four main characters are very, very different. They have different struggles of feeling other, but they all are in some way or another trying to break out of the conventions of the small box that this small town has put them in, and I did really enjoy it. In particular, Nira and Elijah I thought had really good character arcs and were exploring what it means to be non-white in the South. Nira is Indian and Elijah is Black, and their struggles of having their home be a place that can be very racist at times, I think was done really well as they're trying to prove themselves, and the feeling of wanting to move away from this small town, but at the same time recognizing the sacrifices that their parents made to put them in the position that they are. And there's a really great author's note at the end of this book that corresponds with that. So Kaur writes in the author's note, "In writing this book, I was inspired by my own Punjabi's family's ill-fated pursuit of the American dream in rural Georgia. When Devils Sing is equal parts a love letter to the rural South, as well as a speculative depiction of the violent parts of Southern culture and history relating to the systemic inequality found here. I hope you'll walk away from this book knowing there's a rich diversity of people, culture, and beauty in a place that is overlooked and too often demonized when it does make it into mainstream American narratives. The South deserves better." I did really appreciate that author's note, and I definitely agree. In media, in books, in movies, and in TV especially, I feel like the South can be presented as sort of a monolith, and the caricatures of Southern people are often not very flattering. So I did think that the author did a great job in both depicting the evils that can happen and things like systemic inequality that does happen in the South, but also portraying the beauty of the South as well, and just really adding that nuance that I do feel like is missing from a lot of popular media depictions of the South. So I did really enjoy that. So overall, this is such a strong debut from this author, and I cannot wait to see what she writes next. But with that, that is going to be the end of this reading vlog. Thank you all so much for watching. I read 2 great books in this vlog, and the other one I definitely got out of my comfort zone and tried something new. So I do think this vlog was a success. It was fun reading Devilish books for a week. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!